A
you
sneak
don't need
peek
to
at
have
what's
an
coming
opinion
up
or an
next.
emotion about everything.
Yes, you do.
I feel like sometimes people shouldn't have an opinion about things at all because
Why?
I am an expert. Okay, I am
Yes.
classically trained
In the passive
art of passive. I have a license in passive aggressive therapy.
Awesome. Yes.
Most people are conflict averse.
Yes.
And I think the reason they're conflict averse is part of it, I think, is the unknown. You don't know how the person's going to react or respond. And there's a certain level of fear.
I'm not allowed to segue when I try twice, but you can.
You can
All right.
segue. I'll
I
get you one of
tried.
those two-wheel thingies.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love to own one of those.
You would.
I would.
You'd be driving it down the street with like a Bluetooth earpiece, but not like a modern one, but one of the old ones with the fucking the like the mic that comes around the side of your chin.
That's exactly right. Oh yeah, do it up.
Welcome to On the Spectrum Podcast. I'm Steve,
And I'm Nick.
and this is Modern Marvels. Just kidding. This is On the Spectrum Podcast. Nick and I are not experts of anything except our lives and our genitalia, maybe.
I'm not an expert of that anymore.
No.
Mm-mm,
You're not
I'm
an expert
getting older.
of your own genitalia.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Mm-mm. No.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit about conflict, but before we get into conflict, I would like to know how you're doing.
I am well, not that I have any obligation or feel any obligation to be honest, but I had a pretty severe meltdown last night, and we talked about it before we started recording. I became superly over emotional and stressy and shaky and
Wait, is it overly
nauseous
emotional
and-
though, if that's how you're feeling at the given moment?
Yeah, I think that would be an apt description because I was feeling a hell of a lot more and a lot stronger and a
was
large
intense.
variety of feelings, more so than I was. So I would say
I was
yes,
trying
it was
to-
overly emotional.
Trying to not diminish your feelings though.
No, I don't think in that case in particular, I don't think it would be that. Because I had a lot more of an emotion than I normally was
So it was
feeling.
an overwhelming or
yeah.
intense amount.
It was extremely overwhelming. It almost felt like a tension headache, almost didn't, but I was also crying at the drop of a hat, going between crying and not crying several times over last night. It was actually, I had to not go to our rehearsal last night because I was just so overwhelmed, and it came over me rather suddenly and oddly and just out of nowhere. Kind of hit me on my drive from work to home, and it was really, really bad. A lot of dark thoughts, but it was a lot of different competing ideas and thought processes and emotions all at the same fucking time.
I think some of those experiences, not that I'm saying I've had your exact experience, but something similar to that,
Mhm.
right? Those types of experiences in the past have caused a lot of anxiety for me because I don't know if this might not be the case with you, but when you're going through cycles of anxiety, or maybe for you, if you're bipolar, going through your cycles of high and low,
Yeah.
there's almost like anxiety is one of those what do you call it? It's like it's a cycle, right?
Yeah.
I don't know there's a term that fucking psych people use
Uh-huh.
about the cyclical nature of it, that like your anxiety feeds more anxiety.
Yeah. It's called the cycle of anxiety.
Okay, well, whatever it's called.
No, it's actually, that's what it's called. Cycle of depression, cycle of anxiety. If you don't deal with the anxiety at a certain point, or if you don't know how to manage it at a certain point and you just try to avoid it, then the anxiety still stays on you. And then the next moment for anxiety will be that much more intense because you still have the previous anxiety, and they build on one another.
The fear and the anxiety of having those moments
Uh-huh.
caused me more anxiety.
Yes.
So it was like, for a while, I used to get worried about going out and doing certain things
Mhm.
because when I was going through periods where I had a lot of moments like you were having,
Yeah.
it would make me more anxious because I'm like, what if I go out and I start having all these feelings and I
Yeah.
freak out or I have a panic attack in public.
Yeah.
So
When I was younger, because I told you before, I used to think I had a panic attack problem. And apparently I didn't. I was just having meltdowns and shit. But this felt very, very different than anything I ever used to call a panic attack. It felt physical and emotional and psychological all at the same time, which is weird for me to say because it's all three interconnected pieces. But it felt very, very strange. And the part that was the worst for me was all of the coping skills that I normally use, some of which I couldn't utilize because my laptop was out there in the living room when you guys were all doing the rehearsal and stuff, and I was in the bedroom. But like I couldn't watch my phone either. So I couldn't turn on a show and get lost in something else and let my mind go blank like I would earlier in the day I would have done to prevent where I got to. But I wasn't able to get to any of my normal coping skill stuff. And I also was trying my damnedest to avoid my old habits, my old negative coping skills of using irritation, agitation, annoyance, anger to block out the way I was feeling and push people away from me, opposed to just separating myself from them. And that used to create a lot of conflict in my life with other people around me. See, look, I tied it into the topic for today.
So would that be some form of like projection? Like if you're feeling, let's say you're having a lot of negative emotions about yourself, but then you start outwardly acting out against people. Is it because of those those feelings inside of you?
I mean, there's probably a piece to that, absolutely. But it's also a matter of I feel out of control emotionally, so now I'm going to control my environment, so I'm going to be a dick to you. I'm going to say things that are mean or seem like I'm so much more angry or agitated about everything. But I was trying my damnedest to not do any of that last night. And
I was thinking like...
Unfortunately, that means I felt a whole lot of emotions that I haven't felt that intensely in a long time.
I guess I was thinking along the lines of, well, I feel like shit, so I'm going to treat everyone else like shit.
No, well, I mean, again, there's probably a part to that, but for the most part, not so much. It was more about a protective nature of trying to assert my control over the environment around me. And if I invoke that one emotion, anger, it'll cover up everything else so I don't feel the rest of it. And also I can keep you guys from knowing that I am not doing well. So instead of trying to push everybody away, instead of trying to not let everybody see that Nick is being emotional and crying at the drop of a hat, instead, he's just going to seclude himself into his room, and he's going to try to let it pass the best he can, which I guess I passed out for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes at some point in the night. And when Natalie came into the room to go to bed after you guys left, I was feeling a little bit better, but not great, but a little bit better. So I'm guessing I fell asleep at some point. I mean, when... things started to feel better for me when I didn't have my daughter coming into the room constantly, when I was able to get the lights off, when I was able to just lay there under a blanket, something over me, weighted on top of me, being warm, and I had no lights and minimal sound. I mean, I could still hear you guys in the living room rehearsing, but when I was just laying there with minimal sensory input, things got a little bit better, which is why ultimately this morning I was able to say to myself, yeah, you were having a meltdown. Because when I diminished the sensory, it felt somewhat better.
Did I ever tell you about the first time I had like a severe, I guess you would call it, panic attack or a panic attack? Right before I was put on... the first time that I was put on antidepressants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you told me about it. But you didn't tell them about it.
Or freaked out at work.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've told you about it, but I don't think I told you the extent of how... So
I don't think so.
I had recently quit smoking, and I was at work, and I was dealing with an angry customer, and normally it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that day, there was a lot of things stressing me out, and maybe because I had also recently quit smoking, I got overwhelmed, and I walked away from the customer. This was, by the way, I worked in a cell phone company back in the day. I walked away from the customer, without saying anything, just walked away from them while they were being a dick. Went in the back room, and I laid on the tile floor.
Yeah.
At a tile floor, I just laid on the cold tile. My boss is like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
And
just to feel something different, right?
I went outside, walked around, got some fresh air.
Yeah.
And I had this overwhelming, like, I I don't know how to explain it. It's like all the nerves in my body were activated at once.
Yeah.
It's like just not tension per se, but it just felt like
Right.
like when you get nervous.
Yeah.
But it felt like nervousness all over my arms, legs, everywhere.
Right.
And I went home.
Yeah.
I left work early. I went home and I sat on the couch for a whole day. That day into the next following day, I did not get off the couch. I just laid there and didn't move.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like that since. That's the worst. The first time I ever had like what I would call, I don't know if you want to call it a panic attack, if it was a meltdown, whatever it was.
Whatever the reaction was. Yeah.
But I've never had anything that intense before.
Yeah.
I've had other panic attacks or times where I freaked out, but that was the most severe. And that's the only thing I have that kind of relates to
well, it sounds like you can then. Because, I had a lot of that across my body. I was doing a lot of shaking and head bobbing. And
I curled up in the fetal position on the couch.
Back and forth. Yeah. I was trying to do that too.
Just watch TV.
Or
had it running anyway.
I mean, it was horrible, man, dude. I was watching at one point. I tried to put on Friends, right? Because that's one of my go-to shows to just mindlessly watch some fucking TV, right? And I usually watch it with Natalie a lot. But I put on an episode on it once I got my phone. I put on an episode and I'm starting to listen to it, and it's gonna sound so fucking bad. A girl just broke up with Chandler, and I could feel my eyes welling up with tears. That's how tender or how sensitive or how emotional I was last night. Was because an episode of a comedy show that happened 20 some odd years ago, a character in it got broken up with. I was empathizing with their pain somehow. This fictionalized character, and like this morning when I texted you a little after 10:30 last night or whatever it was, and I was watching the newest episode of NCIS, and they were paying tribute to David McCullough. They were paying tribute to David McCullough, who played Ducky or Dr. Mallard on the show. Long-running character of that show. He's also a dude who had a jazz album that got sampled for some hip-hop song. Anyway.
Not familiar with that person or the show.
Yeah, but the song, I know you know the song that he got sampled on for. But anyway, super popular song. Anyway, so, but he in real life, David McCullough died. And so they were doing this, touching memorial episode, send off for the character because they had the character die too. But I couldn't hear anybody talking about this character. I mean, I've watched this show since season 1 and we're in like season 25. But anyway, but any mention of Ducky's death on the show, of that character's death on the show, and it was really hard for me to not just bawl.
Yeah.
And that's why I was texting you. And I was like, oh, the character died. Oh, my God, I can't not cry.
Well, I read the message, but I didn't really know how to respond to it. Also because I didn't know the character.
Who he is. But you don't need to know who he is. Just know that like it's a character for the last 20 some odd years, because I've watched most seasons, actually every season of NCIS. Very beloved character. Anyway, there was actually a line in the show. It was something to the effect of, he said at one point to a character, if you're going through hell, keep going. And for some reason that meant so much to me in that given moment while I was sitting there watching the show and I'm texting you and I'm feeling this way. It meant so much of like, yeah, keep going. I have no idea the reference point that he was trying to make in the episode. I just know they have this clip of him saying something to the effect of like, if you feel like you're going through hell, keep going. Or keep going through hell or something to that effect. But basically it was just keep going no matter what, right? No matter how hard it is, just keep moving forward is how I took it. I don't know if that's what he meant. But anyway, so like I was trying to say before, or trying to use as a segue into our topic, my default mechanism was never to let myself feel this way. It was never to let myself feel my feels. It was always to use being an asshole or anger or irritation or frustration to cover up all this shit, even from myself. Cover up all of this, even from myself. But it also created a hell of a lot of conflict in my life.
I just make jokes.
Yep. But that in itself can make a lot of conflict too.
Can.
Well, because when you're deflecting away from things, whatever it is you're trying to deflect away from, and you're using these kind of avoidant tools, it can create longer-term conflict with people. It can create resentments.
I think part of the reason why I used to try to, or I still do a lot of times, try to avoid some of those conversations is most of the time I don't even really understand.
What do you mean?
Like, I don't always understand my own feelings about things.
About
it takes me a while to process.
Oh,
it always seems a lot more obvious how other people are feeling versus trying to understand how I feel about something.
Okay.
People are like, how do you feel about this? And my default answer is, I don't know. And that's not me avoiding. It's usually because I really don't know. I have to actually it takes effort for me to actually process and think about how I feel. Cause I don't just, unless it's like a really intense emotion and I have a strong feeling.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I don't. So if it's just something where,
let me ask you a question. When somebody says,
like, how do you feel about spaghetti?
So do you actually try to think about how you're feeling about it, or do you try to give an opinion about it?
I don't know.
Because so anytime anybody asks me how do I feel about something, I give them my opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I do too.
Whether I have a feeling or not.
But it could be a more emotional question, maybe like...
It could be, but I always take it from the standpoint of like a practical thing.
I guess like, if somebody says, oh, do you love this movie? Well, that's kind of an opinion question, right? It's like, how do you feel about the movie?
Yeah.
But I don't know. But if somebody asked me, trying to think of something that's not extreme, like an example where somebody would just ask you how you feel about something, but it's not like, hey, how do you feel about your dog just dying?
Yeah. We're not good at subtlety.
But yeah, if somebody asked me a question about how do you feel about, let's say there's a rule change at work and everybody's upset about it. This rule just changed. This policy is different and everybody's upset about it. And they ask me how I feel about it. Well, I don't fucking know. Maybe I haven't thought too much about how it's making me feel. Maybe I did have an emotional feeling to it, but I don't always understand my own feelings about things. I feel like I have to go through some sort of dumb logical process where I try to interpret how I'm feeling unless I'm having like a strong emotional reaction to something.
You know, the older and older I've gotten, the more and more, when somebody says, what do you feel about it? The more and more often I just go, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I don't have an initial reaction about most things. I don't have emotional reactions to shit initially. Well,
you don't need to have an opinion or an emotion about everything.
Yes, you do.
I feel like sometimes people shouldn't have an opinion about things at all because
why?
This is probably going to sound very assholey of me.
Yeah, life happens.
But with certain topics, like especially when it comes to things like politics, I feel like some people's opinions don't matter because. And when I say that, I mean it's because you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. So if people don't know anything about the subject, then your opinion to me is like, I don't give a fuck about your opinion.
Okay, so
it's like if you said I hate Persona. Okay, Nick, I don't give a fuck about your opinion because you don't know anything about Persona.
Right. I will say this much though. When it comes to certain topics, some people feel like certain people shouldn't have opinions about it, but just because they live in our society, they have an opinion.
No, they can have an opinion. I'm just saying their opinion doesn't matter. I'm saying your opinion's invalid.
Well, no. So what I'm trying to say is you're right.
You can have your opinion.
No. Yeah, and you're right. When it comes to Persona, exactly that. My opinion doesn't matter. I don't actually know fucking enough, right?
So if you say that's a horrible game, okay, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. But if we're talking about politics in America, okay? Right. One, I'm going to say this. It has never been my experience that anybody really understands how our government truly works all that well when we're talking about the common person just out and about. Most of you fucking lack certain fundamental understandings of certain things. And yes, I feel like I know certain things a little bit better than other people when it comes to how our government's supposed to function. But anyway, but everybody, as long as they're adult aged in our society, can have an opinion about government. Can have an opinion about politics.
They can have all the opinions they want, Nick. You have 30 opinions if you want. You know what, honey? You have all the opinions in the world you want, sweetie. You can have all the opinions.
But what I'm
have
saying,
them all. But
hold on.
I'm going to say most of the time, people's opinions are dumb
No.
and don't matter
this is-
because a lot of people don't know what I'm saying. It depends on the subject matter. Like there may be one specific topic related to politics or another subject that you know a lot about. But a lot of times people, you ask a few questions and you quickly realize this person doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, okay, so and I will say that like a lot of the times people do talk out their ass, but they have every right to talk out their ass. To me, especially when it comes to politics.
But it makes me not want to take their opinion seriously,
and that's fine. But that's just it. It doesn't make it less valid, and it doesn't make it. If you find it to be dumb, so be it. But it's not that their opinion doesn't matter, because even the dumbest opinion about politics still matters.
Well, that's why I said I'm going to sound like an asshole. But
yeah, that's fine.
I'm just saying, like,
I mean, usually that's my position to take.
But the way that I actually act, right?
Yeah.
If you look at my behavior, I am not dismissive of people. I do listen to people's opinions, and the way that I treat people with respect. But I'm just saying. I mean,
I have a tendency to cut people off more than you do.
There's a part of me that kind of just feels like, kind of fuck them. Like,
well,
if somebody, if I don't want to name anybody by name because I don't want to call people out, but we have certain friends, people that we associate with. If they start talking about a certain subject, I'm just like, yeah, okay, because I'm like, you don't know anything you're talking about. And maybe we sound like that sometimes because, but at least we say at the beginning of the episode,
we're not experts.
We say, like, I'm not claiming to be an expert and my opinion is worth shit. Okay. My opinion doesn't matter about certain things. Like, when some of the psych stuff, I even shit on my own opinions because, I'm not as educated as you and some of our guests when it comes to some of the psych stuff, but at least, I admit I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Right.
But you have people out there who have these strong opinions about things.
Oh.
And then you listen to them and you're like,
strong opinions.
Do you even know what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Strong opinions.
Based on what?
Yeah. So
feelings?
Most of the time, yes. Because for some god-awful reason, we went from a country that thrived, or at least publicly constantly said we loved our empirical data, and now all we do is give a fuck about feelings.
And sometimes it causes conflict.
Yes. Oh, I'm not allowed to segue into it, but you can. Great.
We can. No, so we wanted to talk about conflict today. We're getting there.
I'm not allowed to segue when I try twice, but you can.
You can segue. I'll get you one of those 2-wheel thingies.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love to own one of those.
You would. You'd be driving it down the street with like a Bluetooth earpiece. But not like a modern one, but one of the old ones with the fucking the mic that comes around the side of your chin.
That's exactly right. I might even buy a tracksuit just to go with it.
You have a cup holder on the side with coffee.
That's right.
Right now with your fucking. You'd be that asshole.
I would be that asshole.
No, Jim. No. Tell him I need it on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday.
That's right.
Hold on, I gotta get off my Segway.
All right, so.
So the reason I wanted to, you could explain if you want, but there's a reason why I wanted to talk about conflict. I've noticed a lot of people doing, and this happens all the time, but I've noticed people doing passive aggressive shit all the time.
Yeah.
And I understand people's need, or they feel the need to try to avoid conflict because it can be uncomfortable to confront somebody with things. But I don't understand how it's better, or people think it's somehow productive to do passive-aggressive bullshit. And by passive-aggressive bullshit, I mean, I'm at work, and I'm going to purposely leave the trash overflowing and full because I'm mad at somebody else, so I'm going to make them take the trash out, or I'm going to leave the copy machine empty with paper because they need to refill it, or that type of shit.
So let's start there. In my wonderfully emotional state, this will be a fun conversation. But I want to start right there because shit.
I said passive-aggressive bullshit.
No, right before that.
What? You need to do this? You need to do that? I'm just talking about... No, I feel like it doesn't make anything better. So people would rather avoid...
Right there. Because you said you understand why people do it. Good starting point, because I don't. I don't understand. I've never understood it. You know me. You've known me for many years now. You know full well that I am not one to either A, back down, okay, verbally, okay, and B, I am not one to avoid confrontation of any type.
Well, but most people find it uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, but help me understand this, because I don't understand. To me, it's easier to have a loud, bitchy fight with you, okay, for 15 minutes than to have 6 months of feeling as if you
So I'm
look
not-
at me oddly, or 6 months of thinking that you hold something against me. I'd rather have 15 minutes of
Right.
yelly.
So I'm an expert. Okay, I am
Yes.
classically trained
In the passive
in the art of passive. No. I have a license in passive aggressive therapy.
Awesome.
No, so I think the reason being, there's a few reasons. I think one part of it is, human beings are unlike you because you're
Yes.
weird.
Yes.
Most people are conflict averse,
Yes.
and I think the reason they're conflict averse is part of it. I think is the unknown. You don't know how the person's going to react or respond, and there's a certain level of fear. I think that there may be a sex difference here.
There could be.
And I don't know, so hopefully I don't sound like a sexist, ignorant
Well,
person.
I don't.
But
I
think-
mean, there could be, but I'm not. I don't know.
I think there's some degree of difference when it comes to the way certain genders will act in a certain situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're
I
both
think-
socialized differently.
Depending on what type of man you are.
Yeah.
If I'm talking strictly about men here.
Yep.
It seems like some men might be more assertive, more aggressive a lot of times. But I think also there's a certain level of fear about escalation when it comes to men because when you're dealing with men with other men, there's always kind of there's an underlying tone of or underlying fear of things escalating to physical violence.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not saying that women can't be physically violent, obviously. I'm just saying that men tend to be the ones who take things to a physical.
Yeah, aggress physically faster.
So, like, if you're a guy and you get into a lot of fist fights in school or middle school, high school, and all that, I think you kind of it instills in you a little bit more. Hopefully, if you're taking something away from it, instills in you a little bit more patience and resistance because you're trying not to let things get to that point. But I don't know. I think the people are afraid of things escalating. People are afraid of how people react because you don't know how people are going to respond. You don't know how people. So it's like that fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
I also think that we want generally for people to like and accept us. And so I think there's a part of us that worries how other people are going to view us after we've told them how we feel about something.
Oh.
No?
No. That last part is the one that kind of struck me because it never occurs to me until long after I'm having the argument with somebody that, like, this might affect them long term. Like, it never, like, I know that's a thought, normal fucking people have, but, like, when I'm talking with somebody and things are getting a little heated or I'm getting a little passionate and then that person matches my passion, I say passion, you can call it anger, whatever. And when the other person matches it and we're bouncing back and forth off each other with it, to me, when the conversation's done, that's where it's left and I walk away and I'm good to go. The other person has a tendency to hold on to it longer than me. So that's a difference because I don't think about it. I don't think about it in the sense of, like, what happens after the argument because the argument's done. We said our piece. We said what we got to say and we moved the fuck on. And that's the way I've always looked at it.
Yeah, but I think...
So it's not even a thought.
I think a lot of people worry about... If I come up to you and say, hey, Nick, when you bite your nails at your desk, it's really fucking annoying to me.
And I'm going to go, okay.
May not bother you, but other people might be worried about, they're going to think I'm mean or they're going to think I'm an asshole or they're going to think I'm whatever.
Oh, because
So
I said okay or because you said that to me?
Because I brought up something that you're doing that I dislike.
Oh.
That it's going to affect the way you view me.
But at what point does that become conflict?
Well, I don't think there is
that's
there.
just
I
a
think,
personal opinion.
and
there.
I posted something about this the other day on Facebook that kind of blew up. At some point, I think when it starts out, it's oftentimes it's just in the head of the person or in the mind of the person who has the problem. So this conflict only exists within your head. You think something's bothering me, and I'm worried about talking to that other person about it because I don't know how they're going to respond or how they're going to react to it. But at that point, there's really no conflict necessarily.
Right.
There could be, but I'm talking about because maybe there's some ongoing history there between you and another person. Whatever.
Yeah, but that's a different situation.
If something is upsetting you or bothering you, or you have a problem with somebody, work, personal life, whatever. I think it starts out just in your head.
Yes.
The problem I have is not like a lot of the responses I got from people were talking about trauma or having a difficulty expressing how they feel. Difficulty.
They took your post and they went to trauma.
Right.
They're not talking about conflict resolution or conflict with a coworker or even a
Right.
partner.
But
they're- they went,
that could be a factor. Like if when you were growing, let's say you were growing up and every time you open your mouth to try to share your feelings, you got shut down.
Yeah. No,
you had
no.
somebody
I mean,
emotionally.
trauma response is in there.
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
if somebody was emotionally abusive to you growing up? Or
Yeah.
you had a teacher who used to fucking shit on you all the time, right? Maybe that might contribute to your unwillingness to open up or talk about your feelings. Maybe you just had a shitty therapist. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Which is probably true.
Not
that I shit on therapy a lot, but
the point that I was trying to make in
Yeah.
that post and what I'm talking about now is
yeah.
a lot of people took that part of it, but ignored the part where I mentioned the passive aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so you don't feel comfortable opening up or talking to somebody about your feelings or telling somebody that they're doing something that's bothering you or hurting you, upsetting you.
Right.
Okay, fine. But then why do you have to go and do petty shit?
Well, because, so
You're trying to express to them you're upset in a subtle way. But in my mind, by doing the passive aggressive stuff and delaying the confrontation, you're actually creating more conflict.
Yes.
Or creating a conflict to begin with, because maybe there was no conflict. Maybe you just say, hey, Nick, you're doing something that bothers me. And say, oh, I'm sorry. And that's it.
Well, but why do I have to apologize
You
to
don't,
you?
but I'm just saying,
Oh.
In my hypothetical scenario,
yeah.
maybe I just come
yeah.
up to you and I say, hey, Nick, you did something that bothered me. And you, oh, I didn't mean to bother you. I'm sorry about that. That's the end of it.
Okay.
Then what, but now you made it into something more.
Right. It builds into something
Because
far,
now
far more.
I'm
yeah.
like, why is that person doing something fucking...
Yeah, how come they're being like pissy with me today?
Yeah, how come they're acting like a dick to me? How come they're...
Right.
Because sometimes I don't even notice when people are being passive aggressive right away.
Right.
But after they do it a few times, I'm like,
Even
why are they acting like that?
Even when I notice now when somebody's being passive aggressive, I still just say to myself, that's their fucking problem, and I still go about my day like I normally do. Like, even if I have a hint of what the fuck is bothering them about something I do, I just keep going about it because they didn't tell me.
Well, at some point, though, it gets annoying.
Trust me, it does. I believe very, very strongly that the other person has to be given the opportunity to say it. And if they're not given that opportunity, or if they don't take that opportunity, then fuck, they need to live with it. Now, if they do passive-aggressive shit back, I eventually will call it out and say, look, I know I'm bothering you by something. What the fuck is it? And people will be like, why are you being confrontational with me? Well, because you've decided for the last week and a half to not fucking talk to me about whatever it is that bothered you.
Here's a great example.
Please.
I was watching this video the other day. It was like a TikTok.
Uh-huh.
And this guy was, he has a pickup truck.
Okay.
And the pickup truck belonged to his father, who was I think he was a former police officer or a veteran or something.
Okay.
His father passed away. And one of the neighbors didn't like the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept calling the cops for different reasons.
Mm.
Like, oh, well, the tag's not up to date, or you're parked in the wrong direction on the street. And that type of passive, like, if you had a problem with the truck or you didn't like something, why not just say something to the guy?
Right.
Why do you like call the cops for petty fucking reasons to try to get the guy in trouble because you don't? Oh, your truck is ugly and it makes our street look bad or whatever. Like,
so
dude, fucking,
on a very simple level, it's because they don't want to deal with the conflict, but they still want to act tough. On a simple level. On another level of it, how come? And I'm gonna say
so
this.
let's say either grow a pair of balls and say something to the guy,
like,
or shut the fuck up.
Yeah, like, people are gonna argue with what I'm about to say, but I actually do believe this. Why in the fuck is it my problem you feel something? And I know I'm saying that pretty blatantly and bluntly, but like,
my
when
feelings
it comes to,
are everyone's problem, Nick.
Well, but that to me is kind of what passive aggressive behavior is. It's basically you saying, I want you to know I feel, but I don't want to have to own my own feelings and tell you about it. Like, how come you, and I'm going to take your example of the biting of the nails thing, right?
Yeah.
Why do I need to give a fuck, or why do I need to apologize or do something different just because you don't like that I bite my nails? Why does it bother you so much that I'm chewing on my own fingers? And I'm using that as an example. There's a lot of different examples we could use for that. But why do I have to change what I'm doing because you don't like it? I'm not hurting nobody by doing that.
It could be different reasons. I don't know. Like the example I gave, it would be people would argue, well, it makes our neighborhood look bad or something. Or
yeah, but it's his house and his truck.
Or
what
it's
the
like
fuck?
The neighborhoods. It could be maybe a homeowners association, or if you live in an area where your grass has to be a certain way,
Which, like, that's most towns though, right?
or like if your grass isn't, isn't if your grass is too patchy or something, and then you have that like the Karen neighbor who fucking calls somebody on, calls the homeowners association, or they call somebody and their lawn is ugly.
So, but that's kind of my point. Is like not just as well as why are your feelings my responsibility, but on top of
it's why all the bees are dying, Nick.
Why is it my responsibility to make you happy? Like all of these Karens, and I'm not a big fan of like lumping motherfuckers into a group, but all of these people that start some shit like that we would call Karens and shit, or what's the male version of that? A Chad, I think it is.
No, a Chad is like a Chad is I guess it's not really a meme, but it's an internet term.
Okay.
Refers to a guy who's like masculine.
Oh,
and like,
so what would be the male version?
A guy who gets
of a
all the
Karen?
women.
Oh,
He's
what's the male version of Karen?
I don't remember.
All right, so for all the Kens and Karens out there and shit, the thing about it is like they're saying that their way is the only way. Why is it everybody else's responsibility to make you happy? Fucking go make yourself happy. Like, if what I'm saying, or if me saying, like, why is my the way you feel my responsibility? Now, even if I said something that you don't like, okay, it's not my responsibility that you fucking reacted in such a way unless I said something directly attacky at you, right? Like if I said you should go kill yourself, that's a different story than say, like, if I was like, I think your haircut's stupid. Now, if you go home and cry because I said your haircut is stupid, you might want to think about some shit for yourself, because what I said is not what made you cry. But I'm kind of summing up a bunch of pieces together. It's just when it comes to, like, let me bring it back to the conflict thing. A lot of that conflict stuff comes out of misunderstanding, or at least it seems like it comes out of a misunderstanding between two people, a misassumption, or a lack of perception and or context to a person. We had somebody in a post, or it was in one of the lives you did, that said intent doesn't matter, but this is exactly why it does. Like, if we have a misunderstanding of something, if I say something and you hear it one way, but I did not mean it that way, but you took it that way because of your past, but I said it away because of my past experience, but you walk away thinking you make assumptions about me because of a single sentence I said out loud, and you're all pissy about it, but then you do passive aggressive shit at me. Now I think you're just a prick because I didn't know that bothered you.
Well, in the similar vein,
you didn't get clarification.
I'm not a big fan of any of the absolutist shit that people say online. So there are other autistic content creators who say, This is the way it is 100%, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong, or you're a problem, or you're a red flag, or you're this or you're that. So it's like, okay, sure, that's what you say. And then if somebody asks a question is why, because they don't understand why it's a red flag, and then it's like, then they shit on that person. So.
Yeah, you have to agree because we.
Well, it's obvious why you shouldn't say that.
Really? Okay. Not really. Because if it was so obvious, I wouldn't have had to ask the question.
All right.
I
saw somebody earlier who was getting shit on because they asked, they didn't understand the support needs thing, because somebody was saying that saying high support needs,
right,
not high support needs. It was function. They were saying high function, low function. They were saying that saying high function and low functioning was offensive. And somebody in the comments asked, I don't understand that. How's that offensive? Yeah. And then there's just people shitting on that person because they didn't understand.
So when it comes to that language stuff, when somebody says those words are hurting our community, no, they're not. Some people are hurt by them because either A, they don't understand where they come from, or they do understand it and they don't look at it, and they look at it in a way. Okay, and you can have any emotional reaction you want. Everybody's emotional reaction is valid. That don't make you right. It makes it valid because you're having that emotional feeling. There are still, and I found this while preparing for this episode a little bit, because I looked up some research papers about and studies about conflict resolution and shit, and I came across some about autism. And a paper that was published last year still had function language in it. And I know some people in our community fucking hate function language and they think it's hurting our community and shit. I think what hurts our community more is people trying to tell everybody in the autistic world how to fuck to talk. I think that hurts us far more. I think the arguments we have amongst ourselves, the shitting
Infighting?
on people. Yeah, thank you. The infighting that we have hurts us far fucking more. I think the people who only want to celebrate level 1 and shit on or ignore level 2s and 3s is a problem. I think people who want to ignore the negatives or the deficits that come with autism. And there are, and I want to make this very clear. I don't know how Steve feels about using the word deficit or not. There are pros and cons to being autistic. Straightforward, plain and simple. Some people want to ignore all the negatives and only look at the positives and pretend like it's this great gift from God. And those are called fucking aspie supremacists, and I'm not a big fan of them either because they're glossing over the negative effects of being it. But every single human being has pros and cons about them. Every single disorder has pros and cons about them. But when it comes back to this, because this is all about conflict, how do we solve that? So when it comes to that, Steve, how do we solve it? How when it comes to
somebody
conflict,
asked me this earlier, and they said, well, they're afraid of how the person's going to react.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of somebody blowing up at me or getting upset or getting irritated
Sure.
or angry with me that I brought up something that they're doing wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, it depends on how you frame it. It depends on how you approach the person. And this works for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but I try to approach the person in a very disarming way. I know maybe that sounds too foo-foo fluffy for you.
Don't judge my reaction. Let me make a reaction. Go ahead.
But I will usually, I don't place any blame on them.
Right.
I ask what I did. I will say something like, I've noticed that you're doing X, Y, or Z.
Uh-huh.
I just want to know if I did something to upset or bother you.
Right.
And if I did, I apologize. Even if I'm not sorry, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but I don't want them to feel attacked because I'm not attacking you, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of, and this is me like responding to somebody doing passive aggressive shit.
Yeah.
Is like, I'm asking, well, what did I do that upset you?
Yeah.
Because I really don't, most of the time I have no fucking clue. Like, what did I do to bother
Right.
you?
I have no idea either.
But if I frame it that way,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not mad at you. I just want to know why you're acting this way. What did I do wrong?
Let's see. You do that tactic.
But if you're the one approaching the person, say, hey, Nick,
Mm.
I just want to let you know when you do X, Y, or Z, that it upsets me a little bit. And you can be like, all right, well, fuck you. Okay, well.
So here's a couple of things I do to prepare myself ahead of time, either when I'm going to call somebody out or when I feel like, and this is most of the time, I feel like people are going to call me out because I feel like most of the time like I'm probably doing something fucking wrong. I try to put in perspective of whose responsibility is what and what the real issue is. So by no means do I ever take blame or give blame unless there clearly is blame to be given. And even when there's blame, I don't necessarily like blame anyway. Because even if somebody knows they're wrong and they say sorry, it doesn't change the fact they did it. And sometimes it can fucking hurt, and it takes a little while to process through hurt. At the same time, though, like, the apologize, I don't know. I don't know how other people fucking feel, but I don't give a shit about people saying sorry for shit, for the most part. Like, acknowledge the fucking fact you did something that fucking bothered me. But depending on what it is, you could do it again and I'll be okay. But, like, I'll always approach the situation from the sense of this. I know who I am. I know that I can grate on people. I know that I can seem brutally honest. Doesn't mean I'm truthful. I'm just brutally honest. I can be rather, what are the other euphemistic words people use to describe me? Upfront, challenging, a bunch of that stuff.
Abrasive?
Abrasive. Thank you. That was the word I was
That's
missing.
the one that
Abrasive.
I like to use.
Yeah, that's the one you like to use. But
you're
I
like
also
you're a Brillo pad.
Yeah, that's right.
Steel wool.
But that's also part of why I started telling people up front that I'm an asshole. Not because I'm trying to make an excuse by any means. Not because I'm making an excuse. Because I'm not trying to say, well, you have to forgive me for everything I do because I'm an asshole. No, but it's kind of telling people up front, I'm going to say some shit you ain't going to like. And in fact, I usually give a little bit of a diatribe about, me being an asshole. I'm going to say shit you don't like. Sometimes I'm going to use a tone you don't like. Sometimes I'm going to word things in a way that you're going to find less than sensitive. No shit. But then again, usually when people stick around with me long enough, they know that I'm not really any of those negative connotations. I just have a way of speaking that is less than favorable to people who have feelings. What? Okay.
I thought about something, but I don't want to say it out loud, so I'll tell you later.
Okay, tell me later. Okay, apparently I'm wrong somewhere.
No, it's not.
No. Just tell me later. When it comes to conflict, though, I do want to make sure we're touching base on like how to handle it. I would say if you listen to both what me and Steve do, my direct approach, or Steve's more, hey, what did I do? Like, let's tiptoe into this conversation. There's also 1,000 degrees in between that a person can do. I know some of what I was reading to prepare for this. Talked about how stress can affect conflict. Okay. And I want to read a couple of things on here real quick, and then we'll address other ways to maybe manage. But on here it says, accurately read another person's body language. Hear what someone is really saying. I would say both of those are fucking hard for people in our community to fucking do. Like a lot of people, not everybody in our community, but a lot of those. Now, here's the really important one that I want people to focus on more so than anything. Be aware of your own fucking feelings. Be aware of how you feel walking into it. Be aware of how you felt about certain types of people, certain places, your biases and shit. Because we all have history, and some of us have severe trauma history. Some of us have just histories. Some of us have experiences that affected us emotionally that are going to affect how we view this other human being in front of us. So be aware of your own shit, because they might say something that's completely benign, but it might kick up some strong, horrible shit inside of you. But that's not on them. That's not their fault. It's in you.
What if instead of B9 it causes a D6?
Ooh, if it's a D6, rock and roll, man, we can do some damage rolling at that point. Yeah. So I hope everybody understands what I'm saying with that. I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault how you feel about it, but it is definitely not the responsibility of the person who just said something to make sure you're never upset ever. And then on that note, I also want to ask this honest question. Anybody who listens to this episode, please answer this question for me. What the fuck is so wrong with feeling bad? Like, what the fuck is so wrong with it? Everybody tries to avoid feeling any semblance of less than happy. Like, what the fuck is wrong with feeling bad sometimes? Anyway, beyond that. So, ways to help.
I don't think that happy is a real feeling anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
God, well said, robot.
Yeah. I will say, though, as far as the negative emotions thing is, as shitty as negative emotions can be,
yeah,
and as bad as depression can be,
yeah,
makes for some great art, though.
It really does. It is fucking banging. Like, poetry is way better when somebody's depressed.
Yeah, music, poetry.
Yeah, happy songs don't do as well as hate songs. I got to tell you. Now, like, even though I started this episode talking about how I fucking felt last night and how I was so emotionally wrought and just distraught about a bunch of shit, I got to tell you, like, I didn't, even while feeling all that last night, I felt pretty fucking bad. Like, I don't even think I want to admit how fucking bad I actually fucking felt.
It was obvious to me as soon as I saw you, and I was like, oh, all right, well, Nick is not well.
Which doesn't happen to me often, right? Like, it usually stress and life do not get to me that bad to that point. But I would not trade last night. I am not, by no means did I have a thought last night of somebody please come save me. By no means would I have wanted to take a pill and make that feeling go away. Because I believe very strongly in, you gotta feel your fucking feelings. Positive or negative, you gotta fucking feel them. And it's the only way to actually deal with them.
Well, if you hide from them too long, then you can create
conflict. Yeah, exactly. Conflict in yourself, no less.
I think I struggle with
Ooh, because that's an episode we should do something on
part
too, by the way.
3, the third part of it says, how stress can interfere with your ability to resolve conflict. Being aware of your own emotions. A lot of times I'm not aware, or it's hard for me to understand it. I can do it, but I have to actually put a lot of effort into trying to understand my own feelings.
Right.
Like I have to put a conscious effort into it. It's not like I just I feel this way. It doesn't come to me so easily. I have to how do I feel? And maybe that's a weird autistic way of trying to rationalize my feelings, but I really, if you just ask me how I feel, I'm like, my response or my reaction is usually I don't know. Like I have to really think about it. Well, how do I feel? Am I feeling sad about this? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling angry? It's not always obvious to me. Yeah. Maybe that's weird. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but it's not always obvious to me how I feel.
I wouldn't say weird, and it's definitely not just you. Other people in our on the spectrum, excuse me, other people in our community express the same thing. They don't always 100% know how they're feeling. In fact, I think there's a name for it. I forgot the name of it right now, but I think there's a name for it. You can't identify your own feelings sometimes.
Unless it's like an extreme feeling or something.
Yeah, I can't 100% name the feeling I'm having when I'm having it. I just know whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, I mean,
that's about as far as I go with it.
I think part of the problem might be for me as well is that I have a need to explain everything. Everything has to be explained and made sense. Yeah. So if I am having a negative feeling, I feel, I feel compelled to try to understand where that feeling is coming from, or is it that I'm feeling this way, or am I really feeling this way, or do I feel like shit about myself right now, or is it just that things haven't been going the way that I want them to, and it's made me feel like shit, or is it that somebody else did something to me that hurt me? Like what is causing this? Because it's not always immediately obvious to me if this is something I'm feeling for X reason or Y reason, or what that feeling actually is.
Right. I actually do want to say, because we were talking about language a little bit and affecting other people's emotions and stuff, and affecting people with our words, and sometimes that conflict stuff, right? Passive aggressive language and stuff. One thing I will say when it comes to a lot of this is, like, because we've been doing improv and we've been doing comedy for a bunch of years now.
Yes,
when we do our like uncensored or fucked up kind of shows, we get more of a crowd response, because I think deep down people don't want to have to tiptoe around each other. They want to be able to say less than cordial shit. And I don't mean say mean stuff, but I mean like just kind of actually say stuff, right? Say what they're thinking. And the reactions we get at shows is when we're doing a more carefully minded show, I'll call it. That's a good way to word it, right? Carefully minded. The reaction from the crowd isn't as good, and we don't feel like we're as engaged in the show. But when everybody's on that base level of, all right, cool.
I'm working on a joke for
a realistic way.
I'm working on a joke about Jonestown, and the punchline kills.
Jesus. Oh, that's the best you got?
I just thought of that, right? I'm pretty sure that there is a joke out there that exists that's similar to that joke.
Oh, all right.
Like, I don't think I just completely came up with that, but it was something that popped in my head.
Yeah, it's something similar.
I was trying to think of a horrible joke.
Yeah. I mean, we are going to try to roast you in 2 months.
I guess.
2 months. And we will put it online. I
don't like to do jokes about abortion because usually they end prematurely.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Abortion jokes are illegal in quite a few states now, from what I hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from what I hear. Yeah, the Supreme Court has opened it up so people can terminate jokes anywhere they want.
I see.
It was so bad.
Do you want to do a TikTok video sometime showing the scar?
Yeah.
The scar on the pine. You're a survivor.
So
I just had that David Hasselhoff song playing in my head, The True Survivor.
Oh, that's awesome. So to try to get a little bit of closure on our topic a little bit today, there is a lot of good resources out there for conflict resolution. There is a lot of good research about it out there, as well as, honest to God, and I want to say this, it might not work for you what me and Steve have said today. It might work for you, it might not, the way we deal with it with our own lives. But I will say that the best piece of advice I ever got from somebody...
Don't be a Karen?
That's a great piece of advice. But the best piece of advice I ever got from somebody is it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, feels, or does around you. It matters how you think, feel, and do. And in that regard, whether somebody gets pissed off at you or you're pissed off at somebody else, you got to be good with it. It doesn't matter their reaction. It doesn't matter if they're sorry for it, or if they understand they made a mistake, or if they give a shit or not. It matters how you take it, right? And so maybe the conflict to truly resolve is the one you're having inside yourself of, why am I upset by this? And it's easy as fuck to write somebody off and say, well, I'm upset by it because they're a racist, an ableist, a sexist, a misogynist, they're a Nazi, they're an asshole, they're this, they're that. Maybe it's easy to write another human being off like that. I mean, it's not easy for me to write anybody off, but maybe it's easier for you to write somebody off who's under one of those categories, and that's why you want to be pissed off at them. But you also got to think about, why did what that person who you think is lesser than you to begin with, how did they piss you off so badly to begin with? So anyway, on that note,
not all pee-pee time.
Yeah, not all pee-pee time is poo-poo time. Yeah, that's become the new theme of the end of the shows. So I will say there's a lot of good resources out there for conflict resolution, and understanding is probably one of the most important parts of it. You got to understand the other person's position. You can't make assumptions and shit.
I would say also try to address the behavior and not don't attack the person.
Right. It's like
when you're having
don't blame game.
It's like when you're having a debate, right?
Yeah,
you don't want to argue. You don't want to insult your opponent. You
right.
want to address their argument.
Yeah, you don't want to attack their credibility. You want to attack the position.
Because somebody could have no credentials at all, but it doesn't make their argument or whatever they're saying wrong.
Right. Like, we're not experts of anything, but we might be right. We could be wrong. And we might be right.
What if you are arguing a flat earther, but they're not arguing with you about flat earth, they're arguing about something else, and you say, well, this idiot's a flat earther. Well, yeah, but he's correct about I don't know, the way that light bulbs work,
right.
Whatever you're talking about.
Yeah,
okay.
he could be an electrical engineer who thinks the earth is flat. And if he's talking to you about like electronics, you might want to listen to the guy. He's got some education and experience behind him. Now, when it comes time to talk about things that float around the sun, let's not do that.
That's how modern debates work. It's just like, my opponent's a dumbass. So.
Yeah, it's character assassination opposed to actually debating the topic. But anyway, everybody, thank you very much for listening to our episode. As always, hopefully you found this episode entertaining. Hopefully you found some level of, relatability to the emotional experience I had last night. Maybe you want to talk about conflict a little bit more. But in any case whatsoever, please remember, me and Steve do not presume to be experts of anything whatsoever. But if you like, dislike, agree, disagree, or even just want to say hello, reach out on social media. And as a new thing I'm going to add to this, if you have something to say and you are neurodivergent of any type whatsoever, if you have something to say and you want to find a place to say it, reach out to us. We'll have you on the show.
As long as you have something to say. onthespectrumpodcast.net.
Absolutely. We will talk
also, remember that all pee-pee time
is poo-poo time. Yeah. We'll talk to you guys
Not all
next
pee-pee times
week.
are poo-poo times, but all poo-poo times are pee-pee times.
Yes, they are. Thanks, Steve.
Special thanks to our Patreon subscribers. Thank you, Ray Hansen,